Hey everybody, welcome to the Reveal Report on a Monday. I'm your host George, and we have in the house Gary Wayne. He's gone viral, ladies and gentlemen. This guy's getting millions and millions of views, and we're going to touch on something specifically, the Nephilim giants. We're going to talk about the occult system in regards to the giants, and ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about recent sightings of giants. It's going to be an incredible show. Don't go away. It's coming right up, right here on the Reveal Report. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Reveal Report. What a show. I'm so excited because we're going to get into some interesting topics in regards to the Nephilim giants, the giant seed. And you've had so many different stories you've heard from different people all over the world, online, social media. You've seen Instagram, Twitter, you've seen TikTok videos, and my guest is just unbelievable when it comes to this. He's written several books specifically talking about the Nephilim, the giants, the bloodline. And the reason I brought him on tonight is because there was videos that are going viral around the world about recent sightings in Peru, Majorca, the Middle East, all about these giants. And we're going to talk about some of the older stories from a while back, because things are starting to come around. And there's a reason for that. It's going to be fascinating, a great conversation. Guys, if you love what you see, I appreciate you. And I got to talk about coming up next week. Let's get that out of the way right here, Miss Jessie Zabolder. And we're going to be talking about urban legends. What kind of urban legends? These are things that conspiracists always think are real. But are they? A lot of stories. And we're going to talk about these things and get Jessie Zabolder's view, get her pulse on what these stories, can they be real or maybe just legends? We're going to find out. Urban legends next week with Jessie Zabolder. All right, without further ado, I don't want to waste any more time. My guest, who absolutely needs zero introduction, but I'm going to say his name anyway. This is Gary Wayne. Gary, welcome back, my friend.
Well, thank you for inviting me back. So happy to be back with you again tonight. And a shout out to Barb Murphy from Red Deer, Alberta. I have been there many times.
Now, I got to tell you, Gary, there's videos that are going around. There are so many. Because I wanted to give you time to talk. So I took 3 specific videos that I'm going to play on today's show. I'm going to play them, and then I want to get your take on these videos. So I'm not going to waste any more time. People are tuning in. They want to hear you speak. They want to hear your thoughts. So turn up your volumes and take a listen. Here's the first video. I believe this is L.A. Marzulli. And hear what he has to say, and then we'll get your take. Here it is.
2001, we were in Afghanistan, specifically in the Kandahar province, looking for high-value targets. As I was told from one of the witnesses who was there, okay, the shooter who was there, that's what we call them in our film. Basically what happened, a patrol missed their rally points. They never showed up. They never radioed in. So the next day, another patrol was dropped and they followed the trail. They came into this area in the Kandahar province, and above them was a cave. They were on a plateau up on this cliff. And out of the cave came a 12 to 14 foot red-haired, double rows of teeth, six-fingered giant. In my opinion, it was a Nephilim. It was a Nephilim that maybe was left over from 3,500 years ago when Joshua and Caleb pressed the conquest of Canaan. Remember, the Nephilim tribes are there in the Levant, in the Promised Land. Some people say that, well, how can something like that live for thousands of years? Remember, the Nephilim are the progeny of fallen angels and human women, creating a hybrid being known as the Nephilim. Interestingly, there's a prophecy found in the book of Daniel, chapter 2, verse 43. Their seed will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not cleave to them. The word cleave, from Jim Williamson, is a marriage contract. That's exactly what's going on in the abduction phenomenon. Remember, Jesus himself tells us it'll be like the days of Noah.
It will be like the days of Noah. This is a Kandahar giant that they captured. There was a big fight. It's a notorious story. I have a follow-up clip on that coming up. But first, let's get into it. He believes the giant that these military witnessed is an actual Nephilim, the bloodline, the seed. So I'm going to turn it to you, Gary, and give us your thoughts. I'm sure you're familiar with the story. What do you think?
I am, and I caught an interview many years ago now with Steve Quayle, with the pilot that was at the scene, and it was on Coast to Coast. And still a radio show that's on today, and people can, bring that up themselves. And I found the details riveting, and that not only from the military side, from the accuracy part of the giants in terms of what my research had revealed to me. And so it seems to me either he was fed incredible intelligence or was very well studied, or it actually sort of happened. So getting over to what LA was talking about, is it possible that this is a giant that survived? Perhaps, but it would have to be one that would have been around before the flood. And in the initial sort of creation of the giants, where the body of those ones that were born not only had the immortal spirit, but had the immortal sort of flesh. And that was what the flood was sort of designed to do, was to find a way to kill these beings that were still around. But generations after that, and the ones that show up after the flood, they have shorter lifespans. So unless it was from one that was in stasis and a technology that may have been around after the flood, and it came out of stasis or some sort of resurrection chamber of some sort, sarcophagus, then likely not from that time period. But red-haired giants, and specifically the red-haired Horim giants. Horim means a cave dweller, and this one was living in caves.
Mhm.
And so the description would be very much in line with what a Horim, in terms of the size, the height, the smell, that LA didn't cover off. Also didn't cover off the dexterity and how quickly this giant was. He also didn't cover off, and I'm sure because there's only just a short clip, but the smell that was associated, it like really rotten sulfur and smells like that it was associated. And it was extraordinarily hard to kill. And that's because it was either immortal or it was a post-diluvian giant that could heal itself, just as probably the ones before the flood could also heal themselves. So I find the details legitimate. I can't say for sure that that actually happened, but I have no reason to doubt it. The question gets to be is, how does it show up? Was it living there for years as generations of giants? And if so, where are the other ones? Or was it recreated recently, or was it somehow in another dimension, in some sort of technology, stasis chamber, whatever? But how does it get here today?
Yes.
And we should be very much aware, as LA was hinting at, that there's been a war of the seed line that he was referencing in Daniel 2:43. There's even more explicit passages about that seed line that are in the Bible. But I do agree with what LA is saying, and as usual, he's quite accurate.
Gary Wayne, ladies and gentlemen, joining us discussing the Nephilim giants. We're talking about a story that took place, and this story is an interesting one. There's a follow-up to him, and this gentleman describes a little bit of the story of when a second unit of military soldiers got to Kandahar because they were in search of their friends. So these military guys went out. They went to do a search. They were looking for their other military guys that were lost, and they also vanished. So a team went out looking for them. Here's a clip of what they discovered. Take a look. Very interesting stuff here, guys. Here it is.
The hair of this being was red. The skin was pale, white. He said it had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot. And the feet were wrapped in a very primitive canvas type wrapping. And he said he and the guys that were standing around the body were actually taking their boots and putting it up to the foot. And he said it was, twice as big as 3 times bigger than everybody's boot. I mean, the feet were enormous. They're all putting their feet up to the foot. And he said this thing was solid as a rock. They were all kind of tapping it on the top. And he said it was like a brick. I mean, this thing was just like solid muscle. He said it could have been some rigor mortis or whatever, but I mean, it was apparent from what you could see of this dude that he was a brick house. So
how tall?
So the pallet was 9 feet long, and he's in the fetal position. So they estimated his size at 10 to 12 feet tall.
Wow.
They weighed the giant. They weighed this being because they had to weigh it. The loadmaster had to weigh it before they put it on the C-130. The whole thing weighed, I think they told me, and I could be wrong, but I think it was 1,500 pounds. And then when you subtract all the dunnage and the pallet and whatever else, I know that the final weight was 1,100 pounds. The final weight was 11. And then he told me for sure. He said the weight was, this thing weighed 1,100 pounds. And so you can imagine, let's say it was 12 feet tall, 1,100 pounds. So, I mean, this thing weighs more than like a Kodiak bear. I mean, it's a massive, massive guy. And then, he was asking about the body, like, where'd you guys get this thing? And they told him that they had heard, they didn't know, they didn't have first-hand knowledge. They heard that a group of guys got lost somewhere out in Afghanistan, that this group was out there. These military guys were out there doing something, recon or something like that. And they weren't reporting back in. So they sent out another group to look for them. Another team went out to look for that first team. And when that second team found them, they found them either at the mouth of a cave or in a cave. I can't remember where, but it was in the vicinity of a cave. And they were all dead. And this gigantic humanoid was eating on one of them.
Gigantic humanoid eating on one of them. All right, Gary, what are your thoughts? Red hair, 6 fingers, teeth. He smelt horrendous, weird skin. Talk to us. What do you think about this?
Yeah, so I don't find 1,100 pounds to be sort of unusual. In fact, if that were the case, it's probably closer to 10 feet. Although, as Alberino was saying there, that you hear some of the stories as large as 12 feet. So you have in the Greek history, you have giants like Achilles. Who were 12 feet tall. 12 was the sort of general standard of the post-Diluvian giants. But there were larger ones, just as Gilgamesh was 19 feet tall. So you can imagine something even bigger and sort of heavier. And so when he's talking about the size of the feet, in book 1, I talk about the feet are going to be like a size 25 to 30 for these post-Diluvian giants, and ones before the flood would even be larger still. And so they have a height to width ratio of 2 to 1. So they're not just tall, they are wider. The average human is 3 to 1. So these are described as stout in the Bible. And of course, this is exactly how the giants are described, and particularly like a King Og. who had a bed that was 9 cubits tall, 4 cubits wide. So he's the king of Uruk, or not king of Uruk, he was king of Ashtaroth and Edrei. And by that, he'd be on 21-inch cubit versus an 18-inch cubit on an iron bed because it wouldn't hold his weight otherwise. And that bed would be 16 feet long and 7 feet wide, and he would have to fit into it. So he's going to be like 5 to 6 feet wide, and he is going to be somewhere between 12 and 14 to 15 feet tall. So again, in the same range. And of course, he's Raphaim, which is a red-haired giant. So again, everything sort of adds up. And I estimated that these giants of the 12-foot and larger were somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 pounds. And you would therefore look at Gilgamesh as being almost a third bigger. He'd be 2,500 to almost 3,000 pounds in that sort of range. So these are not just taller people. They have a complete different bone structure. They have a completely different way of doing things in terms of walking and maneuvering. And they had a speed and a shuffle to them that was unusual in terms of how fast it allowed them to move, because they were very, very fast as well. So again, I find the details that are being recounted as quite accurate. And this at 10 to 12 feet, as what Mr. Alberino was talking about on the last clip, would be in range with some of the ones that David also encountered that were smaller than Goliath at 11 feet and 9 to 10 feet. So under 10 feet, you start to get into more of a delusionary giant like an Amorite or a Jebusite or a Malachite. They would have been 7 to 9 feet tall in terms of the sizing that the Egyptians had measured them at.
Again, Gary, there's some wild things and stories. Now, there's many, many stories. And I was looking at some to upload, and I'm like, wow, this is bizarre. This is wild. This is crazy. So many of these giants they're witnessing, especially in like Peru, they said, in Majorca and Spain and the Middle East, these particular places. But it's also being said that there's certain parts in the Americas where they've seen these things, these creatures. Here's the question. Now, you touched on it briefly. Is it possible it's just a form of tall human? Just a form of tall human, not Nephilim, none of that jazz, just a freak of nature. I mean, there's a famous wrestler, Andre the Giant. He claimed to be 7 foot something. That's a pretty big man, 7 feet. I mean, I don't think there's maybe 8 is possible, but let's say 8, 9 feet. That's still pretty astronomical and bigger than the average man. What are your thoughts? Is it possible there's just regular, it's a disease of some sort? Giantism is what they call it. And we've seen basketball players, and I seen a woman on a TV show the other day who was like 8 feet tall. Or 7, sorry, my apologies, just over 7 feet tall. Humongous. What are your thoughts about this?
No, not a chance. So can you have a dilution of the bloodline to a level that might create 7 or 8, maybe even 9 feet tall? Well, we don't really get 9 feet tall records throughout the history unless everything else starts to change with the dimensions and the descriptions of these. And what's also associated with these giants, whether it's in North America or South America, wherever you go, these elongated skulls that are massive and big. And so you can create an elongated skull in a human by binding the head at birth and creating it into that elongated shape, but you can increase the cranial volume. And the cranial volume on these skulls that are found all around the world associated with red-haired giants in North America, Central America, South America, and elsewhere are significantly bigger than humans, and they're sutureless. And one of the things that Josephus documented about the giants in the time of the Exodus, they kept their bones on display at Rabbah for centuries. And they were still on display when he was alive. And he said these bones had no correlation to humans. They were an engineered product designed for something that was not human. Now, we know they're a byproduct of humans because they're the offspring of gods and humans, but there is something else that is formed with that DNA coming from the fallen angels that just makes it hardly related, other than we know it's 50% human, but you can't get into a giantism leap that starts to present those kinds of things, nor the double rows of teeth. There's no explanation for that in science. And again, biblically and with Josephus, we get records of the six or the double rows of teeth. That's in certain giants, not all of them, just certain. So it's almost like a specific variety of them that have 2 rows of teeth. And so again, we're into the area where you can't make sense of it scientifically from a human perspective.
Gary, not a lot of, we're not getting a lot of answers here. We're not really knowing what's going on. There's still no explanation as to why these giants all of a sudden, more now than before, are being seen. They're being viewed.
Yeah.
There's a rumor that the war in Baghdad, so I was told a rumor, that one of the main wars was they were going to particular museums and they were pulling out sarcophaguses
Yes.
with giants. Giants they were pulling out of there. Did you hear about this rumor?
More than rumor.
Oh.
Yeah, more than rumor. And again, before I give you the details on what I have on that, and there's probably a lot more.
Okay.
If it's going to be like the days of Noah in the end time,
Okay.
then we have to understand Noah lived 600 years before the flood, 350 years after the flood. God's walked amongst us at that point in time, both before and after the flood, early on, after the flood, and so did giants. So if it's like that, to be like the days of Noah in the fig tree generation, then we should probably expect to see giants somehow, some way as part of this. Now, everybody probably in the U.S. is aware of the, Iraq ISIS war.
Yes.
And it started in the time of Obama's terms, and Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State for part of that era. And then Trump comes along and he kind of put an end to it. Now, in 2018, there's a FOIA request that's sent in from Hillary Clinton's office. And that's FOIA request number F-2019-02110. And it's sent in by one of her staff named Denetra D. Senegar. And so if you Google it, that's the page I pulled it off of. And this is a little bit clearer, and I also have the link. So when people get a hold of me and I have time to get back to them, I send them the link. And here's what the FOIA request is asking. And it says, Denetra D. Senegar requesting documents pertaining to the resurrection chamber of Gilgamesh, the location of his body, and the location of the buried Nephilim.
Wow.
So that's an absolute mind blower that the U.S. government has information on this. I don't know what they sent Hillary Clinton's office. She would have known from the documents as Secretary of State some of the findings on this, but not just the sarcophagus, which is likely this resurrection chamber of Gilgamesh, which is a 19-foot giant that we talked about, king of Uruk, in the Mesopotamian region, where they had all of the armies and looking for whatever else they were looking for at that time. But they're looking for the body as well, and that somehow the government has this body, however well preserved or not it is, and the location of other Nephilim. And the only reason why you want the bodies is the DNA and what other biological technology you can pull out of that, and maybe create modern Jurassic Park giants through growing that DNA into giants, or at least creating the body for an Oikotarian, for a demon to jump back into.
All right, Gary, this is some crazy stuff. You're talking about this giant Gilgamesh who was in stasis. I've heard this. There was a video clip that surfaced when they found some type of a tomb, a red-headed giant. If you know, if that's what you're referring to, is that what you're referring to?
Well, Gilgamesh is typically understood as a dark-haired giant.
Okay.
So this red-haired one would be a different variety
Okay.
from a different watcher. So that means there are more types of Nephilim bodies that are going to be out there if all of these accounts are true, and they seem likely. So look for red-haired and blonde-haired ones from a Seraphim watcher,
Mhm.
and dark-haired ones to come from a cherubim watcher.
All right, Gary, I'm going to play another clip, and I want you to try to explain this to me. These are things that have been seen all over the world in churches, big ancient buildings. And I want an explanation because it makes no sense to me. Maybe you could tell me something logical. I think the people watching want something logical. So let me play this clip. Turn up your volume, take a listen. Here it is.
Why are so many old world buildings fitted with doors this massive? Doors so tall and heavy they tower over modern humans. The hinges are oversized, the latches sit far above arm's reach, and the frames feel wildly out of proportion. These weren't decorative, they were functional. In many cases, there's even a smaller door built inside the larger one. A secondary entrance, almost like access for smaller occupants without opening the main door. That detail raises a quiet question. Who was the main door really for? Some alternative historians suggest these buildings were designed for a time when humans weren't the largest beings moving through these spaces. Ancient texts from cultures around the world describe giants, not as symbols, but as physical beings who lived, worked, and interacted with humans. In that context, the architecture makes more sense. The doors weren't excessive, they were appropriately scaled. Built for a shared world, designed for more than one size of inhabitant. Mainstream explanations say these doors were meant to project power, status, or ceremonial importance. And sometimes that may be true. But when the same oversized doors appear across continents and centuries, the pattern becomes harder to dismiss, because architecture reflects use.
What are your thoughts on this one, Gary? Big, massive doors all over with different buildings and stairs and giant walkways. I can't figure it out. Logical, or it's just to impose, like he said, royalty, larger than life. That's why they did it. There was no actual function.
Yeah, I mean, to honor the gods, a whole bunch of other sort of things that may be dressing around the edges, but doesn't get to the functionality of why you would do that. So if you have a 20-foot door, the average person was 5 feet high.
Yeah.
There is no functionality or decorative purpose to having something that's 4 times your size or 3 times your size, or because there's various heights, and so it might be more attributed to the maximum size of a giant that you're trying to get through there on a regular basis. So if we look at the organizational structure of the classes after the flood and before the flood, you have the Indo-European, Indo-Aryans, and Aryan meaning nobility, populating the first 2 classes of the educated class, the military class in terms of the officers, the warrior class, the religious class in terms of supplying the priests, and the governing class. So anybody who had wealth, so the oligarch class as well, and the humans would populate the 3rd and 4th class. So these are the royales, the kings of God, as you sort of take that word back in its etymology, or ex deus, and they are the divine offspring of the gods who give them their divine authority. So these giants were, after the flood, anywhere from, in the covenant land, from 10, as we look at all the different heights that David is providing us, or the Bible from the time of David, from 10 feet tall to 11 feet tall. And then we've got Rapha, who's somewhere between 12 and 14 feet tall. And then you have Goliath, that's one of the dark-haired giants from the Mesopotamian region, who's 19 feet tall. These were the royales. These were the kings. Og was the king of Ashtaroth and Edrei. King Sihon was a partner with him, and he had 35 or 40 cities, just as Og had 60 cities under him. Gilgamesh was the king of Uruk. Goliath was the king of Gath. They were the royales. They were the ruling class and the warrior class, and those filled those top two classes. All of the palaces, all the government buildings, all the courthouse or judicial buildings, all the religious buildings and all the education buildings were populated by the top two classes that were giants. So they're built for the functionality of the offspring of the gods.
All right, Gary, I have another interesting clip. Again, I'm going to play this one. It's just look at the door, just to add more to what you've said, which makes sense. Take a look at it's a quick clip. Just look at this door. It's wild to me. Here it is. 24 to 30 feet.
Yeah. Can you imagine hanging that door?
Like,
Yeah.
that doesn't make sense to have these type of doors. It's just so, like you said, imperial.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
there must have been a race of these giants that existed.
Yes. And things had to be built not only for their size, but because they were a warrior class of people. They had a warrior gene. They were perpetually at war. They would have to do the buildings to protect themselves from each other and from people breaking in easily. So again, you get into these massively high walls and city fortresses. And these beings were unimaginably powerful in terms of their strength. And so we get an idea of that from the wars that Israel fought with the giants, and when they were taking the covenant land, and that there is another word for mighty that's used to describe the giants other than Gibor or Giborim, and it is Etzem and Etzem, and it's translated as mighty. And as you get into those two words meanings, this is talking about a paw-like part of the body in terms of the hands, not a hand, but something more animal-like and big and powerful. And then can you imagine with the 6 digits as well and the size of what that hand would be?
Mhm.
But it had those hands alone had the ability to crush human bones by squeezing it.
Gary, this is going to go down a really deep rabbit hole now. A very interesting video I came across. Whew. I'm going to warn everybody now. I mean, the conspiracy theory here is a little bit wild. Is it possible? This is why you're on the show. I'm going to play this video. I want to get your take. This is some crazy stuff. So I'm preparing everybody for it. Take a listen. Here it is.
Interracial alien mating? What the F is going on? Look, wait a second. You had whistleblowers tell you this kind of thing? Can you please unpack that?
I had a guy who was uniformed. He was a senior enlisted with the United States Army. Came into my office in Crestview, Florida, in a non-classified setting. I had members of my staff there, and what they explained is that the military ran a very secret program where aliens that were living were in forced breeding programs with humans that had been abducted from war zones and from even the caravans of migrants. Now, again, I didn't verify this, but what the whistleblower was telling me is that there were like between 6 and 12 locations around the country where this happened, and what he wanted was a group members of Congress to all show up at the same time at all of these different locations so that any of those activities could not be moved. And of course, it's a physical impossibility to get members of Congress to simultaneously show up at like 8 locations at one time. And so that never occurred.
Breeding programs with giants, with kidnapped people. One of the reasons some people are kidnapped, people from the all over the world, are into these programs, I'm guessing, to breed super soldiers or implement this DNA of giant. What's going on, Gary? Talk to me.
Yeah, so you're going to, if you're going to do interbreeding, you're going to have all sorts of agendas as to what you're going to try and do with those. And so you're going to want to create new giants. And if you can find a way to manipulate some DNA a little bit more, maybe you can create some chimera giants. All technologies we're catching up to. So yeah, you would want a super soldier. And you sort of put that together and sort of roll things down stream a bit into the future, and you look at this 200 million man war in Revelation 9. You have some sort of biological, technologically advanced rider and horse. You have chimeras there. You have giants and you have chimera animals that they're riding there. And I think that's kind of where we're going to be heading in parts of this sort of aspect to it. But also look for, some sort of transhumanism to go into that as well, whether it's biological or it's, metal and whatever else with the transhumanism. So look for more of that to sort of come downstream. And they're looking to bring about an advantage, but also they're looking to bring back the race that once ruled this earth. And so as they start to intermarry with humans, you would have a hybrid giant and human versus a hybrid human and angelic. So a lower class of giant, so to speak, that I talked about as the Shazu or the Shozu, as some people will spell it as well. That's talked about in some of the Egyptian execration texts. And or the Amau and the Shamau, as you get other versions as you go more towards the east on these ones. And they would be sort of understood as like the Amorites. So as the Amorites were blonde hair and blue eyes, just as the Amalekim and the Anakim were, Amorites were taller than humans, as they're described in Numbers 13, but not fully giant like Sheshai, Ahiman, and Talmai as the three kings of the Anakim that were there. And so they lived amongst the giants, but as ites versus I am for the international male plural. So they're trying to create larger, more powerful, longer living giants that we would know as elites or elites. The elite, as we pronounce it today, El being an angel and ite being sort of a people. The original format would be understood as Elim, as in the majestic offspring and bloodline of the gods, another term for royale. So yes, they want to bring that. And there'll be a race that's going on, just as there's a race going on with AI today, because it's going to be part of the military complex as things sort of spiral out of control when there's no limits onto and wisdom applied to what is done within science. So we hear about this the same way through alien mythos, doing the same type of DNA renewal or creating hybrids and star people as we would understand them. And understand star people is the same terminology as Nephilim, just as the Tuatha Danann Nephilim and Rephaim were understood as the star people in that tradition. And a star is an allegory for an angel or a god, which mated with human females to produce these giants. So the language is all the same. And we're seeing a little bit more as we come closer to a little bit more of disclosure that's coming out, but they're always going to control this narrative and we're never going to get the full truth. And they'll start probably with intergalactic in terms of all of this, and also probably placing giants as intergalactic as well, versus interdimensional, which is the standard understanding in polytheism.
All right, Gary, that's a lot of stuff going in. All I can talk about when it comes to these type of things is the occult aspect of it. I'll explain and then I'll get your take.
Sure.
I spent 13 years studying, obviously, the esoteric, demonology, different forms of magic worship, and doing rituals. In certain rituals, you have what we call trigger objects. What are trigger objects? Well, trigger objects are things that are going to help to manifest and touch on the power of these spiritual beings. Sometimes you'll see with elitists, they'll have a skull that they'll bring in. Who does that skull belong to? they'll bring other aspects. I've heard of Masons doing rituals personally. I was told this story by a master Mason where they had something near an electric chair. They actually had an electric chair and they were doing a summoning. This is what was told to me. I can tell you these exist. The reason I'm bringing this up is the word that I'm hearing is they're looking for any remnants, including the bones of these giants. And from these bones, not only will they try to maybe extract its DNA, but they will use it to try and summon these beings, these souls, these spirits. If they truly are Nephilim, then the soul never went anywhere. It's still here on earth. And if you have bones belonging to one of these giants and you're doing a magic ritual and you're using incantations, you're summoning.
Yeah.
We're not messing around here. We're getting into some serious, scary stuff right now. So I want to get your take. Is this possible?
Yeah. So think about the body of a human or a giant in three parts: a body, a soul, and a spirit. So we know what the body is. It has all of the hardware, right? And as we understand the blood that flows through and the DNA and all the different systems and that, look at that as the algorithms, the soul, that run this whole biological system, including the brain and everything associated with that. And the spirit merges with the soul and the body as a dwelling place for the spirit. So if you create that dwelling place with the soul and the body and all of those other systems, a spirit can come back into that and occupy that. And it's, we understand in some of the entertainment like a sleeve. So again, through the bones, they're looking not just for DNA, but can they get the DNA and can they have the blood, or can they have the DNA that's going to produce the blood? They're looking for the nervous system. They're looking for the repair system that would be part of it, or at least pieces of it that they can reproduce it again through that Jurassic Park sort of approach to create whatever that hybrid human and angelic, let's call it as in a computer term, an algorithm system that operates within the soul to control the physical body, is used for. And again, we have that same analogy where we get into the AI with these algorithms that work behind the scenes to control the agenda, and they're invisible, as they call them, and the jargon is daemon algorithms, right? So something operates that operating system within this other sort of technological things that sort of can make things happen. The body is kind of the same way, but biological. And so I think that's what they're trying to do. When you're trying to summon the demon back, somehow they might think that maybe the demon can bring that bone and stuff back to life, or they're just looking for this immortal spirit to operate this new clone creature that they're going to create.
I'm going to go as far as saying I believe there are some wild people in the occult, and not necessarily just to communicate, but is it possible they will allow themselves to be possessed by this creature, this being, this entity, allowing them to enter their body and have this giant soul inside a human body? Is that possible that some people in their head think, yeah, I'm willing to be that open tool and allow this spiritual being to pass through me and be through me, like a possession? Thoughts on that, Gary?
Yeah, bad idea, because they're gonna suppress the host and they're gonna take over the body, and that's the usual possession. Different than the avatar effect that they're brainwashing people in to think that it's the same. It's one's a god, one's a demon, and the god is only doing it to provide additional power and knowledge. The demon is desperate for a place of rest and to be able to interact physically in the world again. And one of the things that I should have linked in the last part was when we're looking at this technology that you could bring these beings back, you may need something at the end to animate the body like a jump start.
Mhm.
And that might be what this resurrection chamber that they were looking for in the FOIA request from Gilgamesh's resurrection chamber could be healing, and it could also be fully resurrection from something that's dead, but animates or quickens the body again in preparation for the host to go in.
Gary, they say it'll be as it was in the times of Noah.
Yeah.
That's what they say. So, in a segue to that, what do you think that means? What does that mean, that verse? Because many scholars and people that study and read, such as yourself, will have maybe a different type of interpretation.
Yep.
What's yours? What does that mean? That
Yeah, so the easiest thing to do with that, and what a lot of people do to keep people dumbed down from the times that we're in, is to say, yeah, it's going to be like the days of Noah. It was ungodly, and there were some wars and some violence, and people were carrying on. But that's not the whole story. Jesus quoted Genesis 9:29 with the days of Noah, which is 600 years before the flood, 350 years after the flood, when the angels walked amongst us with their angelic technology and the demigods ruled over us. And so when you look at this passage, and it's why I start off book 2 with the days of Noah, I bring in all of the New Testament passages that show its application to define its topology. And nothing is new under the sun is what it's telling us. What was will be again. So it will be like that. And the understanding of this only brings grief and sorrow, as Ecclesiastic 1 tells us about, in terms of nothing new under the sun. We talked about this bloodline that should be coming back if it's going to be like the days of Noah, and that the technology that we are progressing all continuously today is just catching up to the technology that was before the flood. And so they had the ability to corrupt all flesh on the earth.
Yeah.
And all things on the earth. Then that's the Hebrew word shakath. I mean, to corrupt, to decay, to pervert, to ruin, to destroy all flesh and everything on the earth, all the plant genomes, which is why God had to call all the animals to the ark, because he knew the ones that weren't polluted, so to speak. And that would be another term for shakath. And the violence meshed with this technology that was provided by Azazel with all the arts and crafts of the war. They had the ability to destroy the earth by fire that was reserved for the end time, according to 2 Peter 3. So there is this technology, there is this Nephilim world order that's coming back. You have the externalization of the hierarchy of the gods that Alice Bailey talks about with the entrance of Lord Maitreya, their Antichrist type figure. Hierarchy in Greek means the sacred assembly of archons. So the council of the gods are coming back some way, somehow, as well as the giants. And all of this technology is going to be in play where the earth is going to be destroyed by fire if they get their way. And we need to understand that there's a seed line war that's been with us both before and then restarted again after the flood. And Psalms 21, 8 through 10 is probably the best way to sum it up. And I'll just read those passages for people about this seed line that we're talking about. And this is the terrible ones. And it says in 21:8, it says, thine hand shall find out all thine enemies, thy right hand shall find out those that hate thee. Now we start moving into the important stuff. Thou shalt make them as a fiery oven in the time of thine anger, and the Lord shall swallow them up in his wrath, and the fire will devour them. So this is in the end time, the time of the wrath. Verse 10, their fruit shall thou destroy from the earth, and their seed from among the children of men. That's a different seed line. And these are the terrible ones that are talked about in Ezekiel 32. And they're called terrible ones, the Uritim, just as Ugarit is, and it would be Kiriath Ugarit in the Hebrew, Kiriath meaning city, like Kiriath Arba, which Hebron was originally named um, before it was named Hemberon, and that was the city of Arba, the patriarch of the Anakim. So Kiriath Ug, that's Og, Erit, the terrible one, was the city of the terrible one. And so probably his first city before he moved over to be king of Edrei and Ashtaroth at Mount Hermon. The terrible ones are the ones that are in the pit prison, talking to another terrible one, a royal pharaoh, Necho as it would have been at that period of time, the time of another terrible one, Nebuchadnezzar, who's coming to establish his empire and destroy the nations and put them all as vassal sort of states. Isaiah 25 has this branch of the terrible ones being destroyed on a mountain in the end time, and that'll be at the Armageddon battle, or Har Mageddon, or Har Moed, or Moged, as we would have it, as you have the transliterations and the evolution of assembly, as we would understand that translated into English from the original Hebrew. So, yeah, there's a seed line. It has everything to do with what those 10 kings are that L.A. Marzulli talked about early on, that where he said that they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave on to one another, even as iron is not of clay. These are the 10 kings of the beast empires, of the iron and clay empire, the seventh empire of the end time. These are different seed line that are coming back somehow, some way, either through descendants or regeneration of giants. We need to be aware of that. Otherwise, we are not going to be able to understand what's going on in the world, and we'll dumb down. We'll just go numb with it. And people, hearts will fail. It will be so terrible, according to the book of Luke. So we want to start understanding what happened in prehistory, so we can start understanding what to expect as we get closer to the last 7 years. Otherwise, we are being absolutely led for slaughter with the preparation or the lack of preparation we've received. So we need to learn more about these things.
Excellent. Well said. Amazing, guys. Giants, the Nephilim, Gary Wayne. And guys, listen, he's got 2 amazing books. The Genesis Conspiracy 1, the Genesis Conspiracy 2, where he gets into the giants. He talks about this. He has great background stuff in regards to it. He actually has a 3rd book, Gary, what's that 3rd book you got there?
The Oprimo Conspiracy, AI's Covenant with Babylon. So it takes my research from the first 2 books, put it into the characters, locations, and settings, and it takes my eschatology and shows you how, from looking at things today, how we get to the last 7 years and then into the last 7 years.
Excellent. Gary Wayne, guys, part 1 was incredible. Part 2, he's got that 3rd one. These 2 are must-have. Everyone needs to go online, purchase it, go to his website. You can get it. Gary, tell us about how they can purchase his book and go more information about this amazing topic.
Yeah, so the best way to get more information about my books, or to get a hold of me, or to buy my books, is go to my website. That's the direct route. And so that's Genesis 6 Conspiracy, as you see it on the title, the number 6conspiracy.com. And on the website, I have a generous excerpt of all 98 chapters of book 1, all 84 chapters of book 2. And also up there's a write-up on the Oprimo Conspiracy as well. And so there's a generous excerpt, as I said, on the first 2 books. But if you've not read any of my work, that's a small drop in the bucket of what's in the whole books. And the books are loaded with information. If you wanted to support me, you do that by purchasing my book. So you can go to the Buy Now page, and there's Buy Page 1 for book 1 with discounts. Buy Page 2 is book 2 with discounts. Buy Page 3 is the Oprimo Conspiracy with discounts, and the discounts come with purchasing more than one. And Buy Page 4 is the bundling page for books 1 and 2. Buy Page 5 is the bundling page for all 3 books, and again with discounts. And so you can also connect over to Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, and BarnesandNoble.com directly from the website, and to the Kindle and Audible versions for book 1 and 2. Oprimo is out on Kindle and print. Audible will be done by the end of the month. And once I get the Audible up, I'll get the links up from the website to go over to Amazon for the Audible and the Kindle versions as well. And I'll put more information up in the book section on the Aprimo as well.
Excellent. Gary, an amazing, amazing show. Thank you for the amazing knowledge. And for everybody watching, hey, Gary's going to be joining me on Patreon on the Reveal Report coming up next, because we're going to do a Q&A. Gary, people got some questions. They're going to reach up their hand. They're going to ask you some things about this type of stuff. Usually, you do answer them. You have an answer. And sometimes it goes deep and long. I can't wait to hear it. I'm looking forward to seeing if some of our good friends, including the notorious one himself, will be in the chat with a question for you, because he'll prep a week or two to ask you a question.
Doubt. No doubt.
So I'm excited for it. Coming up next, the Reveal Report, the after show, Q&A on Patreon. The link is in the description. Guys, thank you so much for watching. On behalf of Gary and myself, we hope you have a blessed week, and we'll see you next Monday with Jesse the Boulder as we talk about urban legends. Thanks for watching. God bless, and good night.